Tonight on the docket, what will America become if the federal government is allowed to keep spending money it doesn't have? America will become a bankrupt wasteland of economic despair. Government spending and borrowing does nothing but steal wealth from the private sector and destroy it through wasteful government consumption. And one way to force the government to stop all this spending and borrowing is to prevent it from borrowing money in the first place. Yet with $14.3 trillion in debt, the maximum allowable under current law, the president wants to borrow another $2.7 trillion. Who would let such reckless borrowing continue? Sadly, quite a few lawmakers in Washington would, but not my next guest. Here now, New Jersey Republican Congressman Scott Garrett. Congressman Garrett, it's a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to be with you. Thanks.
What happens when you write letters like you did recently, or op-ed pieces like you have, pointing out the evils of extending debt, going deeper into debt, and pointing out how we can manage the debt service and entitlements and defend the country on the basis of the tax dollars we collect every month? Who listens to that?
Well, obviously not the Senate doesn't listen to that, and obviously the Democrats don't listen to that because, unfortunately, they need to get a grip over there. They don't realize that we have this problem. They don't realize that we're on this edge, this precipice that we're about to fall over unless we get our spending in order, unless they do what you and I do, and that is to live within our means.
What would happen if we got to the point where the debt service was so high? Is there some number beyond which the American public just couldn't tolerate paying it and default would automatically happen?
Well, sure. Actually, and I met with some of the rating agencies before. You saw S&P came out that they're looking at it from the point of view that if Congress has to do something in the next couple of years, or else what? Our government rating would go down from the AAA status. And that just doesn't affect Washington. That affects you and I because it affects the entire economy. It affects our ability eventually to get loans as well.
Okay, so if the rating agencies, which theoretically are neutral and make their judgments on the basis of economics rather than politics, rate the government as a risky venture because it might not have enough money to pay back these debts, and the government has to pay higher interest rates to borrow. And if the government pays higher interest rates to borrow, we all pay higher interest rates to borrow.
We all pay higher, and also we all eventually, if the Democrats are in control and if they have their way, we all pay higher taxes.
Are we going to get to the point 5 years from now when people like John Boehner is saying, we should have listened to Scott Garrett? Yeah, well, he was right. Mortgages are now 17%. They used to be 5%.
Yeah, well, I don't know how many people would say Scott Garrett was right, although...
Well, you're not alone. I mean, Senator Toomey from Pennsylvania is with you, and there are a number of members of the House are with you. Almost all of them come on Freedom Watch and promise our viewers they will not vote to raise the debt ceiling no matter what. But how does the leadership of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives respond when you make these very prudent warnings?
Well, they respond in essence that we're working on it and we're trying to work with the Democrats and we're trying to work with the White House, but you realize that for all their good intentions, if the White House is silent on it, the Senate is doing what they're doing right now. It's been 750 days since the Senate has actually passed any budget whatsoever, going on 2 years. So it's hard to work with the other side on anything legitimate.
All right. What is your thought? It must seem pedestrian to you because of your sophistication in the economy. What is your thought of the fear-mongering coming from Tim Geithner, that the sky is going to fall? I mean, we're told the sky was going to fall Monday. It didn't fall. Then we were told it was going to fall Tuesday. Then they moved it to August 2nd. The sky will fall then if the Congress doesn't authorize more borrowing.
So what we're doing on that is I wrote a letter to the Secretary saying, okay, exactly what mechanisms do you have in order to keep on pushing this all the way back? How far back can you push it? Explain to us how all this works, because really they've been silent on articulating exactly what they're doing. And we're also asking for an explanation as to why is it that you really can't manage the debt. You know, Madison, in the first drafting of the authorization for the Secretary of Treasury, gave them that authority to manage the debt. We want them to do that now.
Right. Do you think that the debt ceiling will be raised? Do you think that John Boehner will reject the sound money arguments that you've been making, I've been making, and other members of Congress have been making, and they'll cut some kind of a deal with Tim Geithner and the president? Is this futile, or is there a chance? Is there just a chance that they won't let the government borrow anymore?
No, I always remain the optimist. I remain optimistic that Speaker Boehner will do the right thing here, as he's tried to do in the past as well. And there's really three quick things you need to do. You need to cut, you need to cap, you need to balance. You need to cut spending dramatically right now. That's what we control. You need to put in place caps legislatively, so going forward, there's laws in place like Graham Rudman at best, but do it better. And also you need to balance the budget. You need to pass a balanced budget amendment out of both houses.
All right. If that is not done,
Yeah.
If somehow we allow the president to borrow 2.7 more trillion,
I'm never there.
Okay,
never
but if that does happen, is the concept of limited government gone?
Yeah.
If the president can just borrow what he wants and spend what he wants, even when the Republicans control one of the two houses of Congress, what hope is there?
Then I don't know. We have the ability now that we control the House to say no to a lot of things. We can't pass things. I mean, we can't get things passed into law because the White House is controlled by them, and Reid controls the Senate. But we at least can stand up and say no. So they can't do it over our objection. They can't do it over the American public's objection.
You know what my dream is. My dream is that every Republican in the House will simply say no on raising the debt ceiling. Then it's over with. Then it doesn't matter what the Democrats in the Senate do, and it doesn't matter what Tim Geithner says or the president wants.
Right. So
can that happen, Scott Garrett?
So it all turns on two things: where the members of Congress are, but also where all your viewers are, where the American public are. Because when these issues come, there will be such intense pressure on members of Congress from the banking community, by the business community. We need the American public to
I'm going to let you go. We're just out of time. But a Fox News poll taken earlier this week said 2/3 of Republican primary voters would vote against any incumbent who voted in favor of raising the debt ceiling.
Well, they need to be on the phone like they were when Obamacare was coming through and saying kill the bill, just as they were in the past.
Scott Garrett, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.
It's not just the president.